侵入した場合、表皮の感染症や食中毒、肺炎、髄膜炎、
You know what? I'm getting more and more impressed with this show the more I watch. The amount of detail and the amount of research that they've clearly done for this is actually really impressive. What's good, Weeb Gang? My name is Dr. Mim, and for those of you that don't know me, I'm like a less attractive, more British, slightly less tight-fitted, scrub-wearing version of Dr. Mike. So you guys seem to really enjoy my reaction to episode 1 of Cells at Work, also known as
はたらく細胞.
And I really enjoyed it myself, so without any further ado, let's get straight into episode 2. Good to see. It looks like we're still sponsored by Subway sandwiches, the best form of nutrition, the only form of nutrition your red blood cells need. Eat fresh, guys. Child labor. Who would have thought it would resurface in 2020 and be so adorable? So cute. By the way, platelets are not the only things involved in clotting blood. There are so many other factors and proteins, a lot of which are synthesized in the liver. But yeah, platelets do play a significant role in that. We also give medication sometimes to people to reduce the ability of their blood to clot so easily. For example, people who are at a higher risk of stroke with irregular heart rates called atrial fibrillation, we sometimes give them warfarin, which can act to reduce the ability of the blood to clot so much. It doesn't directly affect the platelets, but it does reduce the coagulability of the blood, which is just basically a fancy way of saying the ability of the blood to become sticky and form clots. I think they're trying to show the process of converting fibrinogen into fibrin using an enzyme called thrombin. This usually happens at the site of a wound, and the fibrin that they create will be able to form a kind of mesh or scaffolding for the platelets to then entangle into to stop the bleeding and to close up the wound. Which makes me think now, the only logical next step would be for them to show those cute little platelets kind of melding and merging themselves onto that fibrin mesh. Are they going to show that? How are they going to avoid showing that? Let's find out. I think this is someone that I did a blood test on when I was still a medical student. Yep, that makes sense. That much damage definitely makes sense. So yeah, there are different types of skin injuries that you can get. As she said, an abrasion is something that only really affects the epidermis of the skin. If you have some kind of sharp or cutting injury that breaks through the epidermis and gets through to the subdermis and dermis underneath, that could be called a laceration. You can also have puncture wounds or burn injuries. It's good that we have different terminology for things so that if you're just looking at a patient's report before seeing them, you can see that, okay, they've got a laceration or they've got an abrasion. You can kind of get a picture of what you're about to see before you even see them. Okay, so yeah, I know exactly what's going to happen. Your skin is actually a barrier to the outside world where there's so many pathogens, bacteria, viruses, microbes, fungus, which if they were inside the body could cause a lot of damage. So the skin is actually a really good defensive layer. So as soon as that gets broken, you have an immediate risk of infection, which is partly why the body tries to act so quickly to close off any openings. So I'm hoping that Mr. White Blood Cell here is going to grab one of those cute little platelet dudes and chuck him into the hole. I think that's the best course of action right now. You know what? I'm getting more and more impressed with this show the more I watch. The amount of detail and the amount of research that they've clearly done for this is actually really impressive. Staph aureus is a very common bacteria that actually all of us have on our skin. It's colonized our skin, but it doesn't really cause many problems. The only issue is if its growth kind of gets out of control or you develop a type of resistant version of Staphylococcus aureus called methicillin-resistant Staphylococcus aureus, which basically means that it's difficult to treat with usual antibiotics and things. And yeah, if it does get into wounds or into the bloodstream, it can cause pretty bad infections. It can even lead to things like sepsis. More commonly though, it causes something called cellulitis, which is a localized infection in the skin caused by something like Staph aureus. We have really good antibiotics that tend to deal with that pretty well, but like I said, if there is a resistant bacteria, things can get a little bit tricky. Also, this guy looks hilarious. I really want to know what kind of germ he is.
傷ついた血管は収縮することで
Okay, this map is kind of throwing me off a little bit. I don't know where things are starting. I'm guessing this part in the middle. Then it branches out to the brachial artery. That's the artery that supplies blood to your arm. Then you've got the ascending aorta, which is the main blood vessel that comes out of the heart that then splits off to go down to the descending aorta or to supply other areas of your upper body as well. Then you have the ulnar artery, which is another one that supplies the arm. And then you've got capillaries on the side. I don't know, maybe I'm being a little bit too picky with this, maybe it's not really important, it's just a generalization. But the other things that they were saying is true, so vasoconstriction obviously to reduce the amount of blood that's going to the area where there's a broken blood vessel because you obviously don't want to bleed out into that area. Streptococcus pyogenes. This is strange because I just watched Ozzy and Drix episode 1 where the bacteria in that show was Streptococcus pyogenes. It can lead to something called scarlet fever in kids, which can actually be pretty damaging and can lead to something called rheumatic fever where the valves in the heart can be damaged and that can cause really long-term problems even growing up as an adult as well. It can cause infections in adults, but usually Streptococcus pyogenes has a more damaging effect in children. So I'm starting to think that are these cells working in a child's body perhaps? Let me know in the comments if I'm right. Pseudomonas aeruginosa, another great one. It's a gram-negative bacteria. That's just basically a way that we classify organisms based on how they look under microscopy. It can cause serious infections. It can again lead to sepsis. It can lead to pneumonia. A lot of times hospital-acquired pneumonias are caused by this organism. It's not good news. So we saw the valves in the first episode as well, but I think this is a slightly better depiction of it. The main purpose is to stop blood from flowing the opposite direction because in low pressure areas, for example in the veins, you don't want blood to pool around and form clots which can then shoot up to the lungs or to the heart and cause serious issues. They fought the bacteria that came into the body via a wound by making a wound on the bacteria. Is this thing supposed to represent fecal matter? It's brown, it's sticky. I think it's feces. I really wish they would have shown the neutrophils actually doing what they do, which would just be eating them all. They should just show him stretching his body out and engulfing everything and dissolving it. That would be kind of disgusting, but it would be accurate. Seriously, feces is everywhere. I think I saw a Mythbusters episode one time where they tested random things in someone's bathroom to see if there was feces, and there was feces on everything. Wash your hands, guys. So yeah, she's got it pretty much spot on actually. The neutrophils are usually involved in the immediate response. Once the body's kind of figured out a bit more about which antigens are expressed on the bacteria or the virus that's invading the body, then they can send in things like the macrophages and the lymphocytes, but those do take a little bit longer. So neutrophils are usually the first port of call, the first response to an infection in the body. Yes, this is what I've been waiting for. Just chuck them in, just throw them in. Problem solved, no issues. Close up the wound. Throw those children in there. Oh man, this is some deep, deep medical school science right here. So GP1B is something that acts as a receptor on the platelets to something called von Willebrand factor, and when they combine, it allows the platelets to be more efficient in their adhesion and to stick together better and to better stop the flow of blood, which is what they're trying to do in the first place. But this is some top level nerdy stuff that as a day-to-day general doctor, I really don't need to know anything about, but it's interesting nonetheless. Amazing, amazing. But they didn't show the platelets on there. The platelets are also involved. It's not just fibrin. The platelets need to jump on it and sacrifice themselves. Why aren't they showing kids sacrificing themselves? Oh wait, now that I've said that out loud, yeah, I kind of get it. So that's it. Once the wound is closed, once the barrier to the outside world is once again complete, then all that's left is for the immune system to get rid of the remaining pathogens in the body. And as long as you've got a decent immune system, you're not immunocompromised or on chemotherapy or anything, it should be a pretty easy job, assuming that the wound was relatively clean to begin with. Obviously, if you had a very dirty wound or there's risk of tetanus, rabies and things like that, you need a little bit of extra help. But generally, the body's pretty good at taking things from here.
いえどうしてもお礼を言いたくて来たんです。
I'm not gonna lie, I'm surprised they're both still alive. They shouldn't be alive by this point. I mean, the amount of time since I watched the first episode and now has definitely been more than 30 days, so at least one of them should be dead. So that's it, they're dead. That red blood cell and the white blood cell, the main characters of the show so far, are dead. Once they form a scab, they're going to fall off and then that's it. They're not going to be able to come back into the body. Oh, and I thought this show didn't want to be brutal. Another pretty good episode, I have to say. I'm not sure they depicted the blood clots and the roles of the platelets entirely accurately, but then again, they have to change things for entertainment purposes, so I guess it makes sense. Anyway, I'm enjoying it and I'm pretty into it right now, so I hope you guys also enjoyed. If you did, please do let me know by leaving a like and hitting that subscribe and bell button as well. Also, I stream on Twitch throughout the week. You can find me by searching for Dr. Mim or checking the link in the description. Until next time, guys, stay safe and stay healthy. Peace!